as we've seen these conversations on social media, for those of us in the diaspora who are not there in Israel, have been really, really challenging. And it's really, really hard to feel as though we must be following along, but seeing so much of the negativity out there. And I just am so grateful to everyone who is with us today, who has mobilized their social media following. And I'm excited to take us into our next panel, Trendsetting Zionism. I'm going to turn the conversation over to Michelle Rojas-Tal and Moti Ankari. Michelle is Hadassah's past Zionist scholar in residence and a speaker and advocate known for her work helping young Jews navigate complex conversations about Zionism, Jewish identity, and Israel engagement. Moti is a designer and influencer and an amazing Instagram follow. I highly recommend it. Together, they'll be discussing how each of us fashions our unique Zionist identity. Welcome, Michelle and Moti.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. I like many of us, I think we are finding the moments of being able to smile and take a deep breath very difficult over the past few weeks, but being able to see Moti's beautiful face and be together in conversation and celebrate that we unintentionally dress to complement each other as the flag of Israel, which wouldn't have it any other way. So talk about fashion and trend setting. We didn't plan it, so
and I got
I'm
the
glad
star
that we can
right in the
smile.
middle,
and the Magen David. So we are ready to jump in and get into this conversation. First and foremost, it goes without saying, and Moti and I, as real life friends, have obviously texted back and forth over the past couple of weeks to say our thoughts and prayers. It's beyond thoughts and prayers. Our hearts, our souls, our minds, our everything are with the victims, the families of this horrendous massacre in Israel, sending our strength, love, and prayers to our soldiers who are on the front lines, and amen, praying with all of our might for the swift and safe return of all of the hostages that are in Gaza. So we both wanted to start with that first and foremost before we jump into our conversation. So Moti, I wish we were seeing each other during happier times, but I'm still so happy and so proud to see you and share this virtual stage here with you today.
I as well.
Okay, so before we get started, and I know you and I have discussed kind of shifting our conversation, given the recent events of the past few weeks since October 7th. But before we do that, I think in a gathering like this, in a forum like this, with the many people who are listening to us, I would love to hear about Moti's Zionist identity. What makes Moti proud of being a Zionist, being a Jew, of being an Israeli? And how do you find in your day-to-day you balance that with the professional world that you are in, which obviously is not predominantly Jewish or Israel focused? Who's Moti, and why does he care so much about Israel and about being a Zionist?
So a little bit of background information on me. Even though I was born here in Brooklyn, New York, my parents are both Israeli. My siblings are Israeli. I grew up basically going to Israel once a year. I speak Hebrew fluently. It was my first language. I just always had a connection to Israel because I loved it. So it felt home to me more than Brooklyn felt home to me. Anytime I was there, I just felt like a natural gravitational like feel with the country. And growing up, like I never heard the word Zionism in my life. Like no one would be like, "Are you a proud Zionist?" Like I'm a proud Israeli. Like I'm not like I hate that like we've had to take this word because the people that hate Israel, like we're like, okay, we can't call ourselves like Jew haters. What can we do to be against the Jews? Like let's call them Zionists. Like let's use their liberation movement and let's make that a thing and be anti-Zionist so we don't be called anti-Semitic. But growing up, I was never like pro-Zionism. I was just pro-Israel. I was I was pro being Israeli. And just growing up, as I was growing up, I then got into the fashion industry, where during my first internship, I remember I got the job, and the guy told me, I was nervous to hire you because I felt like you're such an Orthodox Jew. And like you're like you go to all these like holidays and all these different things, like it might be like I don't know if it's a lot. And I was like, at first I didn't realize how like bad that sounded, but I know he didn't mean it in a negative way. I think he just wanted me to be there readily available, like for the weekend shoots and all these different things, which is completely understandable. I get that. And after that internship, I never came in saying that, oh, I'm Jewish and like, oh, I have Shabbat and I have that. I never did that after that because of that moment. But then as like, like at that point, I was like not trying to hide my Jewishness, because there was a time that I felt like I was hiding my Jewishness because of the opportunities I felt like I was missing or losing on, and because of that conversation. But as time passed and the older I got, I realized how many people hate, Jewish people. Like it's not like everyone's like, yeah, it's like people that think Jews aren't hated, like are so naive. I thought that. I thought there was no such thing as anti-Semitism. Like, oh, this is just like whatever. It's just like people hate each other. It's fine. But no, like the more after the last 3 weeks, like even in 2021, I didn't experience what I experienced this time. But the last 3 weeks, I realized that these people are openly and completely okay with being anti-Semitic. And I never call anyone an anti-Semite. I never do, because I hate like tarnishing that word with like, people that are anti-Semitic, I call it anti-Semitic. I don't like using the word over and over again. So for me, like I always like I just realized in the last few years that I have to like really hone it on my being a Zionist. I hate calling myself a Zionist. An Israeli, a proud Israeli. My parents are from there. I'm proud to share their culture. I'm proud to be there. I'm proud to go and showcase it in its positive light. I hate that we have to defend it every other day, but here we are. So yeah, I feel like my identity as a Zionist is just, it's just in me. It's just who I am. Like I step forward and I don't need to say like I'm a Zionist to tell people that I'm a Zionist.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you. And I think finding that balance when so much of Zionist identity, is the response and the reaction, as you pointed out, to anti-Zionist sentiment, right? And so
Yeah.
that feeling of needing to explain, this sense of pride and belonging and community and national liberation, which is absolutely legitimate for any group, right? It's not a matter of taking it away from another group or saying ours is more important, but the fact that so often we feel in this position that we have to kind of defend it, or that it's defined based on those parameters, is really frustrating. I want to just read a little tidbit of something, one of my favorite posts, and we will share Moti's Instagram handle. Please follow him because his posts are so important and so timely. But just one that really sits with me, that you posted back in July. And the first image is of you at the Kotel, you at the Wailing Wall, holding on to the Wailing Wall. And you begin to share the story. And I won't share all of it, but I just want to share the beginning part because I think it's so, so touching. And I also want for you to hold on to that, because I know how much you've been in the thick of it, battling so much of the hatred right now, fighting for Israel, fighting for the victims of this, fighting for the hostages being held. And I think all of us need to kind of remember to hold on to that inspiration in our community as we dive into this continued conversation and this battle for hearts and minds. It really is. So there's this incredibly beautiful picture of Moti at the Kotel this past summer. And he writes, "This is my first time coming to Israel as an Israeli citizen. I was born and raised in New York to two Israeli parents. My older siblings were born in Israel as well. For the longest time, I've been stalling to get my citizenship, mainly because I didn't find the need to get it to identify what and who I am." That was a part of what you were saying, right? Like it was just ingrained in me.
Yeah.
I know who I am. And then at the very end, and there's some background about your Savta, your grandmother, and where she was born. It's a beautiful story. But at the very end, you write, "Who knows what would happen if Israel didn't exist? It was important for me to do this for her and for me. I've never been so proud to be an Israeli." And I really wanted to share that as a reminder, both for you, you wrote it, you remember writing it, but for everyone listening, and I'm a strong believer that you are meant to be wherever you're meant to be at every point in your life. And the fact that you took this massive step just a few months ago, and now we are in this moment of historic proportions, a moment that this is our generation's battle, right? This is our generation's darkest moment in Jewish history as it's being written, in Israel's history, in Zionist history. And I can't help but get over that you just took that step that was so powerful and so emotional and so meaningful. And it was almost like there was a bit of intuition there for you. I can't get over that. And I wanted to share that with everyone and remind you of it, because I thought it was such a powerful, beautiful post then. And I still look at it the same way today. Yeah.
Thank you. It was from last July though. Just
okay.
It was last July.
Okay. So
I had it pinned on my profile because I love that. I love my grandmother's story so much. So like I want to keep it there. So then when people see it, like when people come to my page, it's one of the first posts that they see. But
beautiful.
I was just in Israel as well, but it was last July.
It's a beautiful story and a very powerful one. And I hope that people are finding, both through the beautiful work that Moti is doing online, which is so important. We need to be looking for our inspiration. We need to be looking proactively for our Zionist community, for our Zionist identity, while we are balancing the reality of the weight of the hatred and the impact of what is going on right now. So I want to really ask you, since someone, you are someone who lives and breathes social media, right? I remember you and I were together last month at a dinner. And even when I went to take a picture, come on, Michelle, this is the way you have to take a picture. What's wrong with you? Because I didn't know how to hold the camera the right way. But this is literally, you are someone that embodies the understanding that so many people are consuming information, whether it's news, entertainment, whatever it may be, health advice, whatever it may be, they're doing so through social media. What is your take on what you have seen vis-a-vis social media? And if you want to get into the nitty-gritty of certain platforms versus others, that's fine. But really, when it comes to portraying what took place in Israel, in this past few weeks and what has then come after, what is your take on some of what you've been seeing?
Oh, wow. It's a heavy question because there's just
Big
so
one.
much that we've seen in the last 3 weeks. The one thing that I will say, it's kind of like a generalization, but I've never in my life, for any event that ever happened, have I seen the denial, the justification, and just the whole smear of us like making this up. I've never seen such a thing. Like I've never people like the attack happened on October 7th. There was justification for it. The next day, we were like finally like gathering bodies, things. We were saying that people were beheaded, children were killed. No, we lied. Apparently, we lied. Like constantly, like we're always defending ourselves, which is such an odd thing for us to be. Like I've never seen such a thing where a country or a person has to defend themselves. And like, oh, the hostages, they're being treated okay. Don't worry about it. Are you kidding? Like, how are you going to say that a rapist can rape a woman and then just buy her a luxury meal after? And oh, it's all okay because they're morally good. Like, there's this level of delusion with these haters, and I've never experienced something like this ever without any conflict, without any war, anything. I've never seen it like this. I've never. It's kind of scary. Like even today, like I just responded to someone's post. He posted saying 12 days ago, Israel warned the South that they were going to bomb them. They should evacuate it. 12 days later, Israel bombed them. So I commented saying like, that's 12 days more than the Israelis got when Israelis murdered them, when Palestinians murdered them. And I got a message saying, I said before Palestinians bombed, slaughtered, and killed Israelis. And someone commented and said, Palestinians didn't bomb Israelis. When? What are you talking about? Like, there's this crazy level of delusion, and they're fed, like, I don't know what they're fed, but they're not seeing the full picture. And it's scary. It really scares me because how could you convince someone that the sky is blue if they want to believe it's pink? Like there's no changing that person's mind. I will say though, I've had conversations with very few, very, very few that have been fruitful, that have been like very much, this girl that lives in Syria sent me a message. And at first she was like cursing me out. And then, I was like, you know what? I'm going to respond to this girl. And I responded to her and had a conversation with her. And she sent me, like, I sent her a lot of different clips of the other side. And she's like, oh, wow, like I'm praying for the Israeli. It ended off with her telling me good night in Arabic and telling me that she's praying for the Israeli children. So like that for me was a small little win in my book. It's not a win at all, but like it's a small little win of just having conversation with someone who obviously is spoon fed the complete, just a one-sided story. And yeah, her excuse might be, yeah, we're also fed a one-sided story, but you know what? There's a lot of like I don't go around like, I know there's a lot of people that say Hasbara. I don't go around the Hasbara talking points. I don't say, oh, if you're gay, you're gonna get thrown off, in Palestine. I stay away from those talking points because in the end of the day, that's not the core issue. The core issue here is that they don't want Jews, the Yehud, in the Middle East. And that's the issue. That's the core issue. Like we could go around talking about this guy bombed me, you bombed her, this, that happened, gays, women. We could talk about that all day. But the core issue is that they don't want us existing there. And if you look at it, like before Gaza is only a couple, 15 years, 18 years there, like with them taking over
Hamas,
Gaza,
yeah.
the settlements. Netanyahu didn't exist back then. The wall, the fence didn't exist then too. The checkpoints didn't exist then too. What was the issue when those things didn't exist?
By the way, I think Moti, on that point, it's one of the most one of the things I think that has just gotten completely lost. And as you said, there is so much misinformation and disinformation, and people throwing accusations of propaganda at one another. I equally have been as disgusted to like some of the comments that have been made, by within traditional media outlets as well about, needing to see pictures. And did President Biden confirm the images he saw or not confirm, or maybe some of the images were and like the level of intricacy and detail that was needed for some of the most heinous acts one can't even imagine, because they are simply unfathomable to think about. But what I think has been completely kind of lost for the victims, those who were massacred, who were murdered, those who were kidnapped, these are people, many of them, who embody the essence of efforts to make peace. I mean, you're talking about people who help drive Palestinians who are crossing over from Gaza to hospital treatments in Israel. Many people don't realize that Saturday, the day of the attack—
These are peace activists. Yeah.
Correct. There were peace activists that were kidnapped. The Ma'avar Erez, the Erez crossing on Saturday, the entire passage is for the purpose of humanitarian passage, right? So there were Palestinians on their way to hospitals for dialysis and all types of medical treatment that they received in Israel. And that was the day of intention, obviously one of the holiest Jewish holidays as well, Simchat Torah. So, but the level, I think, of absolute, evil, there's no other way to describe it, to also intentionally attack the very crossing where Palestinian citizens are attempting to get to their medical needs. And that knowledge was in the hands of Hamas, in addition to the Nova Festival, targeting a music festival, young people who are out there celebrating nature and love and living free and happiness and every positive aspect you could possibly think of. I think for so many of us watching the irony that you were able to engage more with a young woman in Syria than many people feel they're able to engage right now with folks that they work with, that maybe they've known for most of their respective life, who they've grown up here with in the United States, who they went to college with. That part, I think, is really fascinating, right? And I think that is what we see a lot of people within the Jewish community right now struggling with, is that feeling like these are people I've known, that sense of disappointment, right? That we have stood out there for causes and for issues that we have been passionate about. And that is not, let alone not being reciprocated. Some have used, many times we have seen the term, the silence is deafening, used time and time again. What are your thoughts on what you're seeing in that space, in terms of, let's call them fair-minded individuals who wouldn't automatically be exposed or influenced by a certain type of propaganda or a baseless hatred? What are your thoughts there for the many people who are listening? And these are their struggles, right? Because these are folks that they work with or that they're friends with. And that really has become very complex.
Are you referring to the people that are quiet or the people that are posting against Israel?
I think both. I think both, right? We can talk about both, but people that we
Yeah.
know, right? People that we're friends with, that we
Yeah,
care
yeah,
about,
for
are
sure.
part of
For
our
sure.
life, you know?
I have, first I'll touch base on the people that are your friends with that are staying silent, because I have a lot of friends who aren't Jewish with massive followings, and I get it. It's not a fun thing to talk about when then you're going to get attacked on for it. I took two influencer friends with me. I took Noah Schnapp with me to Israel this summer, and then I took two male influencers with me who aren't Jewish. And the two male influencers, they've reached out to me. They obviously shown their support to me directly, and I know that they're with like, I know they're on my side. Like, I don't need support. It would be really nice to see the support, to feel that I have that support on social, because there's so much against it. I'm like, it's it's not political, calling out terrorism. Like, it's not political, but apparently in this case it is. And now, especially like when Israel's responding, I think it's even more complicated. So I get it, like, I understand. Like, I could see how, like, I haven't, the first few weeks I haven't been like eating properly, I haven't been sleeping properly, like, I've been looking at these DMs. Like, it takes a toll to take a stance on either side. I'm sure about it. So for them, like, the people that are quiet, I prefer them to be quiet than be against us. I prefer them to be quiet than be against us. Like, Bella Hadid being quiet this whole time, blessing, blessing. We have Sean King enough. Like, Bella Hadid quiet is like the best thing ever. Um, and I have I have mutual friends with Gigi and Bella. Like, they messaged me, and we talk about it. Like, our mutuals talk about it. Like, her best friend, Gigi's best friend, is good friends with me, and we'll just have conversation. She would just obviously tell me, like, you know, like, they don't want to harm Jews, and of course I know that, and of course I know that they won't post specific things that are like pro-Israel, because then their people are going to eat them up. Like, it kind of like works against each other. But for the people that are quiet, I think it's just that are your friends. If they're not reaching out, maybe they're not your friend because they don't care. But if they're reaching out and like they're showing their support, I feel like that's all that you can really ask, especially when this topic is so sensitive and takes so much energy. The people that that are posting against Israel, that's the hard part. Like, I feel like I lost a lot of friends this week. I just unfollowed everyone, or like I sent them a message. I'm like, sorry, I was about to curse. Get out of here. I'm not here for this. If you're not going to condemn what happened on October 7th, and you're going to talk about what's happening today, stay quiet. If you're going to be quiet on October 7th and you're going to be loud today, stay quiet. Like, if you're going to ask for a ceasefire and not ask for, in the same breath, to return the hostages, stay quiet. Like, I don't care. Like, I'm not gonna, oh, but Moti, like, why aren't you pro ceasefire? Like, of course I'm pro ceasefire. Once the hostages are back out, I'm pro ceasefire. Sure, no problem. In that same breath, in that same sentence, like, I'm for that. Um, Also, we need to find a solution. Like, how do we end the cycle of violence? How do we end the hatred of Hamas? And I hate calling them Hamas. Like, I like to call them Palestinians, because they don't get to hide and keep the word term Palestinian as an innocent angel, and like they get to throw all of the heaviness on Hamas, because there's many supporters of Hamas, and there's many Hamas members, whether they're women or children or whatever it is, being trained to be the next Hamas. Like, I don't like when people are like, oh, well, it's not the Palestinians, it's only Hamas. Like, they don't represent Hamas. A large amount of them do, but like, we can't deny that, you know? So
Yeah,
figuring
I
out,
think you bring up an important point. One of the conversations I remember having very early on was about the Fogel family and the horror of when the Fogel family was murdered in Itamar, and baby Hadassah was murdered in her crib, and she was 3 or 4 months old, and the horror of those images. And I questioned, and I remember how angry I was and how vocal I was, because I've been in this space for more than 20 years now as a proud activist. But I question, were we as a people loud enough and horrified? Really, I've asked that question because, the school in Ma'alot, what happened there, right? I mean, this was on a level that is impossible to just even fathom. But the that same, I think, ideology and hatred, which, by the way, it's not, I know a lot of people feel like it's a good soundbite. It's not. It's that same hatred and ideology. I've had conversations with Lebanese Christian friends in the past few weeks, Syrian Christian friends in the past few weeks, Muslim American Pakistani women in the past few weeks, who have all said, we feared for this day, where the level of this type of extremism within the ideology would somehow become complacent amongst fair-minded individuals, right? And so I think that is a message that people really need to understand when we're dealing with, there's some questions here in the chat about, the Israel as a colonizer. The Israelis are colonizers. They don't belong there. They're foreign to the land. Someone was
I saw a great TikTok video for this.
Someone was referring to a city council meeting and feeling outnumbered, right? So like all of these defamations and accusations that are good sound bites, and I think very much play into a discourse in the United States around racial equality, around issues that matter to Americans, and then trying to take a situation which is absolutely not applicable under the parameters of discourses that we have here, but yet sticking them in order to very quickly shift opinion against Israel, right? So I know that you've been experiencing a lot of that. So what are your thoughts kind of in that arena as well?
I mean, I feel like a lot. Sorry, hold on, wait. Can you repeat the question?
So
I got caught up on another thought.
Right. So we spoke about like the accusation, for example, around colonization. So Israel's a colonizer. That's a very big accusation. The second question, which is a completely different question, was really a sense of feeling outnumbered in terms of being, whether it's in a physical room or an online room or online platform, that sense of, it seems like you are in the 5% and 95%. By the way, I'm a little bit more optimistic. I still think for the most part, most people actually don't care either way, right? I think they're generally like, okay, someone
tuned
here,
out,
they're kind of tuned out. So what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so the outnumber situation. I mean, we are outnumbered. How many billions of Muslims are there and how many Jews are there in the world? We're outnumbered, which is fine. But the thing that's different this time compared to 10 years ago and compared to 48 and 67, the difference today is we have Arab countries that support Israel. It's a crazy shift. Like, we've never seen this before. Of course, now we also have a lot of Americans anti-Israel, which is also another crazy shift. But we've seen this. We've seen, I've even seen support on like my Instagram. Like, I'll get messages like, oh, I'm from India, I'm from Brazil, I'm from Italy, I'm from Dubai, I'm from Morocco. Like, I'll get all those messages that show support, which is incredible. I think like there's something that's very interesting with all these terms. Like, they have to they label us 15 different terms, like occupation, ethnic cleansing, like apartheid, and like all these. They need to like label us 75 different words to get their point across, meaning that their point is obviously like doesn't exist, because they need to label us XYZ, which I feel like for me it weakens their point. Like, for us, it's like Palestinian terrorism isn't okay. Like, that's it. That's the point. Like, we're not going to say they have an apartheid, which they do technically have apartheid, because we're not allowed to go to their cities and go to their schools and go to their restaurants. And technically they do want to ethnically cleanse us. Perhaps they're projecting. Who knows? But like, with all these terms, it's just like, like how they call us Hasbara, that's their version of Hasbara. Like, they'll just throw all these terms at us, and you just have to ask them, do you know what this term means? And how is Israel committing a genocide when the population is increasing? How is Israel have apartheid laws and don't get me wrong, I definitely do think that there is some, issues between communities, and racism does exist just like anywhere else in the world. Don't get me wrong. And it works against both of each other, like the Israeli Jews, and then the Israeli Arabs. There's obviously like not conflict, but there's, just like any other place in the world.
Tension,
Obviously,
sure.
that's something.
There's tension. There are things that happen.
Exactly.
Sure.
And that's something that we have to work towards. But to say that it's an apartheid state where, I have an Arab gay friend who's not out to his family. He is one of the most wealthiest Arabs in Israel. He loves Israel. He's so pro-Israel. Like for me, like seeing that, it's like, there goes the apartheid theory. Like the other day I was looking at Yosef Haddad's video where he was shouting at Arab students saying, go study in Jenin while they're going to school and protesting against Israel, and they go to school in Tel Aviv. Like there goes the apartheid theory. There that goes. Boom. That goes. Like I feel like debunking a lot of these. Again, I'm gonna say this again. Like no matter what you guys do, if you show them the proof in front of their face, if they want to believe the sky is pink, the sky is pink. Like there's no changing their minds. The people that we have to change their minds or show is the swingers, the people that don't know, And
yeah,
that's
I
the
think
people
it's such an important point because it all ties in together, right? When we speak about, can we shift the narrative? How do we shift the narrative? I think one, and you do this so well, Moti, it's about this is who I am. This is my story. This is my piece. This is why I feel the following way. And this is the evidence that I have to say that. And I think focusing that on individuals who do have interest and do want to learn.
And always try to keep your emotion
in check,
because in check, because you don't want to sound crazy. I know I probably sounded crazy so many times, but I've been trying to formulate sentences without any emotion and just trying to get my point across, because you don't want to be angry. There was this one girl that I have a lot of mutual friends with, and like I saw her post and it was borderline. It was her justifying the murders that happened on October 7th. This was on October 7th. And I messaged her and she replied to me, and she said she said a lot of, she didn't know that she was saying things that were anti-Semitic. And I was like, like you calling us the Jews and saying, well, the Jews have been doing this to the Palestinians. You do realize that comes off as racist, right? Like completely generalizing a group of people. Like I wouldn't say the Muslims, just did October 7th. You wouldn't say something like that. And just trying to explain people, again, she tells me, well, I went to NYU and studied decolonization, and my friends are Palestinian. I'm like, well, maybe that's the problem. Maybe you need an Israeli friend.
Yeah, I think we would need 10 hours to speak about campus, because what is happening.
Campus is the worst.
I think we are seeing the implosion of a system that has been broken for a very, very, very long time. It did not start on October 7th. It did not start last year. It is a travesty. And if we had 10 hours, I know we would get deep into that. But I think one of the things that is the same there, right, is exactly what you're saying, whether it's our colleagues in law firms where we work, or fellow teachers in a school that we're teaching in, or our kids who are on college campuses, etc. It is about who are the people here, just like you said, who I can engage with, who I can try to inform, who as a person I'm reaching out to that wants to learn, that wants to actually find sources for factual information and understand more about the narrative. And not easily falling into the trap of just the hatred and fighting back against the misinformation and the defamation. It is so difficult. All of our hearts are breaking every time we see an image of a person ripping down posters of children that are being held hostage in Gaza. Americans, by the way. And I want to remind everyone that is listening right now, whether it is in your post, whether you are going to a rally, you're doing something on social media, in front of actual media, speaking to your local Congress people. This is an American value as well. The fact that there is anyone glorifying terrorism, murder, the kidnapping of innocent individuals is going against a basic American value. And I think we need to continue to emphasize that point. 22 years after September 11th, there are people in the streets of Times Square glorifying terrorism is abhorrent. And I think those are one of the things we have to be steadfast in reminding people of as well. I think it's incredibly important. I think we have time for just one more quick question. Did you want to say anything, Moti, before I throw one last question at you?
I mean, I was just gonna like end off with that point. Like, if people are, if you are gonna, you know, engage in conversation, obviously, like, know your facts ahead of time. Do not use the same talking points that we've been using. Try to like come up with something that, just facts, not just like talking points about like women and gay people are oppressed and women are oppressed. Like, try to stay away from that and just try to talk really core of the issue, and try to be as emotionless as possible, even though it's kind of impossible during this time, because maybe you can accomplish a good conversation. Like, I think it's the conversations that are gonna help our future, I feel.
I agree. And I think you're definitely one that's saying we need to continue to amplify our voices right now, even though
Yeah,
it
for
may
sure.
sometimes feel like, are we screaming? Does anyone hear us? Does anyone see us?
Yeah,
But you
some
definitely
of that
feel
feel
that people
helpless.
should
Yeah,
continue to amplify their voices.
people are listening, people are watching, people are hearing. Those who want to watch and those who want to listen are listening, and those who are completely delusional and want to continue with their one side story are doing the same. So, like, I
Yeah.
think again, you just have to continue having those conversations. Don't feel hopeless, don't feel helpless, because it's important for the future. I'm really nervous about the future.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think there have been a lot of moments where so many of us have paused. And really this is our moment, right? Like I continue to think about, the responsibility that we all have, the obligation really in this moment that we all have, to spread information, to really be a light, right? I mean, we speak about being a light unto the nations. Here we are. We must in this moment against all odds. And if I think you look at so many moments in Jewish history, the odds have never really been in our favor. Let's be honest. Like
Yeah,
they really haven't. It's not what we're known for. So that part I think doesn't um worry me as much. I think it is the rate at which information we saw with, the failed rocket by terrorists that then fell on a Gazan hospital, and that, how that kind of pummeled out of control in terms of the media. So the rate, I think, at which information is getting out there is one that causes a lot of people concern. But I think your message of continuing to amplify voices, amplify your own voice, tell the stories, by the way, I would highly recommend that. I know that you, Moti, have made so many of those stories personal, telling people this could easily be your sister, your child, your grandmother, all people that you know and can relate to. How many of us have been to a club at 4 o'clock in the morning when we're 20 years old, and the last thing that one could ever even fathom is a terrorist coming and ending your life simply for dancing freely with your friends, right? So I think those are the things that we want to continue to make relatable, and tangible and real for the like-minded people. And that's how we continue to change hearts and minds. So thank you for the amazing work that you do every day. And do you want to tell everyone your handle on Instagram so that they can make sure to follow you?
it's at Moti Ankari, Moti, last name Ankari, and it's on all platforms the same.
Thank you so much, Moti, for everything you have done and continue to do, and just being such a champion for our people. And again, our prayers, our thoughts, our strengths with all of Am Yisrael at this time. And may I see you only during brighter days.
Amen.
Toda. Thanks, Moti.
I'll see you guys. Thank you for having me.
Okay, back to.
That was amazing. Thank you, Michelle and Moti. I loved hearing about Moti's journey and how he's been using his platform to share pro-Israel messages. I also think his advice is so spot on to keep your messaging simple. I had someone ask me recently, how do I start engaging? It feels like whack-a-mole when I go to one argument and then all of a sudden someone says something else and I'm saying, oh no, but the water in Gaza, it feels like quicksand in a lot of ways. And I think that is such an important point of just saying, like, simple. You're not going to win every single argument. And if there are people who just don't believe you, they don't believe you. I also think we've had such a wake-up call in the last 3 weeks, particularly those of us not in Israel, about how much negative sentiment there is out there. And it's quite alarming to see. At the same time, something I've been really moved by is seeing a lot of people I know who may not have thought much about their Jewish identity or thought that it was important to them or something they needed to talk about or focus on. They've really embrace their Jewishness. They don't want it to just be something that makes them a target or a victim. They want it to be a part of their identity. And it's been kind of amazing to watch a lot of people dig deeper, to throw a Shabbat dinner maybe for the first time, or go to a service somewhere if that might be something they always did or something they would never thought they would do. It's really been special to see in the midst of a dark period of time, to see the way Jews are coming together and also inspiring themselves. And I think educating themselves about Israel and embracing their own Zionism has been a big part of that. We can no longer afford to stand on the sidelines, as a lot of us have been fortunate enough, privileged enough to have been able to do for much of our lives. And I think we're all realizing that each of us makes choices every single day about the role our Jewish identity and our support for Israel is going to play in our lives. That's everything from making an effort to support Israeli companies and artisans, or making certain that products you purchase are created by companies without an anti-Israel bias, which sadly is the case occasionally, or how to respond when a store we frequent has bowed to BDS pressure and banned Israeli-made products. There are small decisions that we're faced with all the time, and how we approach them are things that are under our control.